From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal's Week in Review. The legislature met for days 21, 22, and 23 of the session, leaving them with 7 days remaining until sine die. In case you're curious or need to plan, let's walk through what the rest of the session might look like. Under the Constitution, the legislature has 105 calendar days to meet for 30 legislative days. With just 7 to go, the House and Senate should see a mix of 2 and 3 day weeks through the end of May and into June. Most years, legislative leadership decides to take a 10-day break between the second to last and last day of session in order to avoid what's known as a pocket veto. The Constitution grants the governor 10 days to veto or amend legislation, including after the session adjourns. So, if the legislature waits until the last day to pass important bills, she could veto them, and they'd have no recourse. With the 10-day window, they gain the ability to override any potential vetoes on that last day of session. It doesn't happen every year, but it does more often than not. Should the legislature choose that option, it would likely mean that Monday, June 19th, is the last day of session. As it happens, that is the 105th day since the session began on March 7th. Getting into legislative action, we'll start in the House, where lawmakers worked through 3 full calendars this week with some key bills. Senate Bill 154 would limit how quickly the state can suspend someone's driver's license for non-moving violations. Sponsored by State Senator Will Barfoot, the bill was carried in the House by State Representative Tim Wadsworth.
If you have a juvenile detention center or a detention facility, if someone brings contraband in, they don't have the authority to find what contraband is. If you have people bringing in phones, anything that shouldn't be in a facility, they cannot charge those individuals. What this does is it just adds detention facility and juvenile facilities and give them the same authority as DOC and also county jails to find, contribute, and charge somebody who brings illegal drugs or any other substance into the facility.
That bill passed the House, went back upstairs and passed the Senate, and is headed to the governor. One bill that generated plenty of debate was a proposal aimed at preventing children from being exposed to pornography by requiring computer and smartphone manufacturers to automatically activate filters that restrict access to mature material. House Bill 298 is sponsored by State Representative Chris Sells.
If this bill passes, tell me what impact would this have? Will the manufacturer have to create a certain type of phone for the state of Alabama that's different than other states? Will each person have to go to a retailer that sold them the phone to get this changed? Do you see any anticipated consumer an increase in costs from the consumer? So talk to me a little bit about that. And then the other thing is, while I agree that our kids are exposed to a lot of things that they shouldn't be exposed to, I do think that this is more of a more comprehensive an issue beyond just porn alone.
So the filter I'm talking about activating is already on the phone. They make the phone with the filter. All this bill says is when you sell the phone, have the filter on instead of off. So when you get the phone, you will set up a password. Whoever gets the phone, a minor can't enter into a contract. So whoever gets the phone at a store will, at the time of setup, will set up a password for the filter. If they want to turn the filter off, they can turn it off. But they will be the only one that has access to that password.
That bill passed 56 to 30 with 11 abstaining, and it now goes to the Senate. Let's take a look at other notable bills that passed the House this week. House Bill 465 from State Representative Rex Reynolds establishes the Opioid Treatment and Abatement Fund. This is the fund that will allocate money the state received from drug companies as part of the opioid settlement reached by Attorney General Steve Marshall. It passed unanimously and goes to the Senate. House Bill 117 from State Representative Danny Garrett would increase the amount of taxable retirement income to be eligible for exemption from $6,000 to $10,000. It passed unanimously and goes to the Senate. House Bill 399 from State Representative Chris Pringle would change the 2024 primary election dates so that the primary runoff would be 6 weeks after the primary instead of 4. Without the change, the runoff would occur the week of Easter. The bill passed 91-11 and goes to the Senate. House Bill 229 from State Representative Chris England would allow nonviolent offenders convicted under the habitual offender law to be eligible for resentencing. It passed 64-37 and goes to the Senate. Randy Scott covers the House for Capitol Journal. In his story tonight, he goes deeper into the week that was in the People's House.
House Bill 298 was one of many bills facing lawmakers this week. Its goal is to set up safeguards preventing access to questionable websites through cell phones and other computer tools.
You're saying that for Alabama, they would have to create a cell phone that have a different setting on it specifically for Alabama. And if you're telling me that's not going to cost us more money.
I guess it comes down to what it's doing to children and what you're willing to, I'm willing to pay a little extra money. I mean, I just paid $800 for this little phone. So if it's going to cost me $810 and it's going to protect children, I'm all for it.
Well, I'm not saying that you should. I don't think it'll be just a $10 fee. If they got to reprogram the phone specifically,
they update software.
It'll say Alabama mode.
House Bill 298 is approved. Thursday action on the House floor includes a discussion on House Bill 339 concerning election runoff races.
This bill simply changes the runoff election after the primary to 6 weeks. Originally, it was only for 1 year, but the probate judge has asked to make it permanently that after the primary, the runoff will be 6 weeks and not 4 weeks.
When they passed the Help American Vote bill, and it took it to 6 weeks, and one of the primary reasons they did it then, one of the reasons, was that it helped our military overseas to get their ballots in, especially during a runoff election. Not only that, but it helped that those Americans that serving abroad in various capacities, it helped them get their ballots back in also.
House Bill 339 is approved. Lawmakers from both chambers meet in the House for the annual Medal of Honor program, honoring law enforcement personnel throughout the state.
You've heard me say many times, standing at this well, that our law enforcement profession continues to be under attack. Yet today we pause and honor these recipients today and honor those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We'll also recognize those injured in the line of duty and those that have put their lives in danger to save others.
And whereas for his bravery on June 29th, 2022, and for the events that followed, Deputy Brad Johnson is highly honored and deserving of the 2023 Legislative Medal of Honor.
Up in the Senate, senators worked some long hours this week due to multiple filibusters delaying the days. One bill that wasn't controversial was legislation meant to train, encourage, and incentivize school principals in Alabama. Senate Bill 300 from Senator Arthur Orr would create the Alabama Principal Leadership Development System. It would also create stipends for principals and assistant principals who complete the leadership program.
This bill will be important for principals and compensating them and upping the training for principals. Also, there's a stipend in here for hard-to-fill schools that are struggling. It'll help us have a better system of principal preparation and training, and also, like I said, compensate them accordingly if they take that training. And there's some accountability. If they raise the bar for the school and they have better outputs, they could get a bonus for that. So I know the principals are very much for it around the state.
The Senate also took up House Bill 24 from State Representative Reed Ingram. It would prohibit individuals from loitering on state roadways or rights-of-way. Senator Will Barfoot, who carried the bill in the Senate, noted that the bill was aimed at public safety, protecting both those on the side of the road and drivers.
Because of their proximity to those vehicles that pass through there. So It is again an attempt in that regard to make sure we keep not only those individuals who are on the state right-of-ways and roads safe and try to protect them, but it's also an attempt to protect the motoring public.
That bill passed unanimously and now goes to the governor. Here's a look at other notable legislation that passed the Senate this week. Senate Bill 299 from Senator Arthur Orr would place sunset provisions or expiration dates on certain economic development incentives that don't currently have them. That bill now goes to the House. Senate Bill 298 from Senator Andrew Jones establishes the Sweet Trails Alabama Project Fund, which is the first step in creating a statewide master plan for greenway trails. It goes to the House. House Bill 254 from State Representative Steve Klaus requires any new local motor fuels tax to be spent on roads and bridges. There was a technical amendment added to the bill, so it will now go back to the House. And maybe the most controversial bill of the week, the ESG bill. That stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, a recent movement which Republicans claim big corporations or mutual funds are pressured into adopting progressive policies, like climate change policies, that aren't necessarily profitable. Senate Bill 261 from State Senator Dan Roberts aims to push back by prohibiting the state or local governments from contracting with companies that boycott other companies due to political reasons. After hours of debate, the bill passed on a party line vote of 28-7. The Senate also took up legislation on the acquisition of land by foreign entities. As originally written, House Bill 379 from State Representative Scott Stadhagen would have barred Chinese citizens, entities, and their government from purchasing land in Alabama. After concerns were raised over the bill's implications, it was significantly revised to reduce the scope of the bill, but it also expanded the countries of concern to include Iran, Russia, and North Korea. It passed 26-7 and goes to the House. There was also action in committee this week. The House Health Committee met for a public hearing on legislation that would codify the biological definitions of men and women. House Bill 405 is sponsored by State Representative Susan Dubose, who says the bill, known as the What is a Woman Act, is meant to protect women. The bill drew criticism from the LGBT activists who held a rally at the State House this week. Several spoke out against the bill, calling it discriminatory.
Who would have thought it would be necessary to define age-old terms such as male, female, mother, and father? But when a Supreme Court justice cannot define what a woman is, the time has come to do something. We know common sense and science must prevail. The purpose of my bill is to codify definitions for some sex-based terms into state law. Male, female, man, woman, mother, father, sex are all defined for the purpose of this bill.
My concern about this is it seems like it's going to set up the gender police, that we're going to determine, well, you look male, so that's okay. But if you really can't tell what gender they are, how are we going to prove what gender you are? So that concerns me.
In law, choosing the wrong definition leads to injustice. This bill is not about biology. It masquerades as biology. It tries to use a technical definition, but it's not the right one. This bill uses an arbitrary aspect of a person's biology to regulate social spaces. It's the government sticking its nose in to all of our lives to make them more dangerous and, frankly, more annoying. This bill is big government examining and classifying your body, your wife's body, your husband's body, and your child's body. If it passes, it will be telling my friends, my family, my coworkers, and my community, we don't care that you accept Belle as who she is. You will have to use our definition, and you will obey our mandates.
No vote was taken on the bill, but it could come up next week. The Senate Fiscal Responsibility and Economic Development Committee took up and passed legislation to put a 98-cent per month fee on phone lines to fund mental health crisis care. Senate Bill 328 from Senator Garland Gudger is meant to authorize funding for the state's 988 mental health crisis hotline and expand mental health crisis response statewide. It just so happens that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Capitol Journal's Karen Goldsmith reports on what the Department of Mental Health is doing to raise awareness about resources available here in Alabama.
Alabama's Department of Mental Health, along with the State Department of Veterans Affairs and the Montgomery Biscuits baseball program, recently held a Strikeout Stigma baseball game to let attendees know about the available mental health resources.
It's very important for us at the Biscuits to be able to shine a light on these things. It's one of those things you never know what somebody's going through. A lot of people kind of look at baseball as it's a slow game and there's not a ton of action, but I look at it as an opportunity for conversation, be able to connect.
With the Alabama legislature's support, a statewide continuum of care designed specifically to address mental health, substance use, suicidal crisis, and emotional distress has been established using 3 approaches. Anyone can call, text, or chat 988 to seek mental health or substance use care for themselves or someone they know.
Since July 2022, 988 has served as the new 911 for mental health care crisis in Alabama. When you call 988, you are connected with a mental health professional who can talk to you, come to you, or care for you in one of Alabama's crisis centers. In less than 1 year, 988 has received more than 30,000 contacts.
Also, there are mobile crisis outreach teams. These are mental health professionals who come to people wherever they are and provide care. The third approach, the crisis care centers. There are 4 around the state. 2 more are scheduled to open this year.
All the crisis centers in the state, they operate on a no wrong door policy. So anybody can come in and seek treatment, and we'll triage that individual and see what do they need and what kind of services they need, regardless of their ability to pay. We will provide them services and quality services. And they can stay for up to a week if they need to, but a lot of times we're able to resolve that crisis in less than 24 hours. And the nice thing is we can follow up afterwards and provide them with the whole continuum of services afterwards. We will triage anybody 5 and up. We can only admit individuals who are 18 and older.
She adds that those younger than 18 can be referred for admission to a local hospital if that's needed. For Capital Journal, I'm Karen Goldsmith.
Joining me next is Alabama Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth. Governor, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, always great to be on, Todd.
Well, we're more than halfway through the session. We're actually in the last third of the session. You get to sit up there and preside over the Senate. You have a different vantage point than we do. We kind of look from the other angle. So I'm curious, from your vantage point and presiding over the Senate, seeing all the bills come through, how do you think the session is going so far?
Yeah, the session's gone smooth, and I've been real encouraged by the senators we've got as well as the House members. I would say this is the most pro-business Senate we've ever had in our state's history. I mean, when you look at the work they're doing, the incentives have passed, just the priority on actually taking obviously the budget surplus we've had and how we're allocating that, and looking at tax cuts, looking at potentially rebates, looking at saving money, right? These are all conservative things, and also making long-term investments that are going to pay off in education. And so I've been real encouraged getting to work with everybody. I think obviously there's been some risk, but for the most part the pro tem, majority leader, minority leader have done a great job of working together and doing what's in the best interest of the people of Alabama. And that's sharp contrast to DC. And I think it shows that if you're willing to talk to people in the other part of other party, right, and just talk about areas you can find common ground, that we can still work together. And look, at the end of the day, I think proof's in the pudding. Alabama's economy is roaring. We have record growth, and a big part of that is what the legislature and governor ourselves do, and so we're excited.
It's funny. I remember talking to you I guess more than 4 years ago when you were first coming into the role as lieutenant governor, and you did a lot of training. Okay, you've got to know the rules and preside, and you had to practice and all this. Now it's old hat. Now you're the expert a little bit. It seems like just watching, you're sometimes communicating with the members wait, let's follow the rules here. It's
Right.
a little different.
Yeah, no doubt. So I came from the House, right? For the members that don't, I mean, for your listeners that don't know that, I served in the House 4 years and got elected lieutenant governor. So I knew a lot of the rules, right? But the Senate rules are different from the House, right? And different, different way they do things there. So I had to learn that. My biggest fear when I got elected lieutenant governor is not understanding the rules or procedures, and so I studied hard to make sure. I've known that now after doing this for 5 years, my fifth session, I certainly got it down and understand that well. And we kind of are able just to fly through stuff and get it done efficient. And I think the people appreciate that. And it's my job, right, as lieutenant governor, to make sure we're doing everything right, per the rules in the Constitution. And fortunate to have Secretary Harris there by my side, and he's got a ton of wisdom and understands to make sure we're doing that correct. And really proud of the work we do to make sure everything's done correct. Jeff Skaggs, my chief of staff, does a tremendous job to my right there, and making sure the bills get assigned to the right committees, and just making sure everything flows efficiently. And Derek Trotter does a great job too for the pro tem and making sure that everything flows. But my hat's off to the pro tem. It's been great. And I also want to say this, hats off to my colleagues in the House, right? I think Speaker Ledbetter's come in and really led well, done a good job. Chairman Garrett and Chairman Reynolds have done a great job as well, coming into new roles. And so really proud of the House and how they've been able to get things done. So
some of the colleagues you came in with, right?
That's right. Yeah, we came in the same class. Yeah, so the speaker and myself.
A lot of behind the scenes. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of behind the scenes staff really do a lot of great work, and they don't get the credit they deserve. Let's talk about issues. Space Command. This was the big news on Monday. NBC News comes out with a story. We sort of had some rumors about it. I wrote about it a little bit in Inside Alabama Politics about this could be coming. That the Biden White House may reverse the Pentagon's decision to base Space Command in Huntsville. Of course, it was under review, but they may do it based on Alabama's abortion law and, sort of relatedly, Senator Tuberville's hold on military promotions. You've been very involved in military stuff, including and very bullish on Space Command. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I was mad at the president and potential people that are involved in trying to take this from Alabama. That was my initial reaction, because I don't think it's fair, and they're doing the exact thing they said they weren't going to do, was get involved and let politics be involved instead of we got Space Command on merit, right? We finished first on several different independent reports, right? But even let's go further than that. And I thought Senator Britt did a great job talking about why we needed it here. Saw a video of her last night that she, did that. But she pointed out some things that are important, right? Huntsville's consistently been a number 1 or number 2 city in the country for people to live to, right? We got more PhDs and engineers per capita than anywhere in the world there. We are the rocket city in Alabama. And the reason we got that was all kind of different things, right? From stuff we've done to make us one of the most military and veteran-friendly states in the country, to, the cost of living in Alabama, right? To the fact that that facility there, when you look at it, makes strategic sense. And I think
the Arsenal.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, yeah, I'm just assuming everybody, the Arsenal. And so when you look at that, we were the right decision, and to change that for politics, in my opinion, certainly endangers our national security. It's the wrong thing to do. And so, and let's get down to reality. The president knows he's not going to win Alabama. Colorado is potentially a purple state, and so he's playing politics with Space Command, and it's wrong.
Yeah. The other side of that coin is just trying to see it at face value. Okay, abortion. From a progressive standpoint, they would say, well, no, that is a quality of life issue. If because Alabama's law is basic, is no exceptions, no abortions, almost always, and then you put on top of that Senator Tuberville saying we don't support DOD even allowing you to travel to other states, at least not paid for by the Pentagon. Do they have a point there in that service members that could come to Huntsville would suffer in quality of life because they don't have that abortion option, whereas they might in a state like Colorado?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I think at the end of the day, whether it's a pro-life state or pro-choice state, that should have nothing to do with it. I'm proud of the fact that Alabama's pro-life. I'm proud of the fact that Senator Tuberville's fighting for that issue. But I think at the end of the day, let's get back to the criteria. If that was such an important thing, why didn't they have that type criteria in the initial assessment? they didn't, right? And so I think at the end of the day, we got it because of, if you look at it, cost to build there, cost of living, right? The access to education, you look at things such as license reciprocity for spouses, right? All these things that military bases, depend on, right? The fact that we have a talent pool that can work there. I mean, so these are reasons that we got that there, and we have so many successful companies here. It'd be foolish to take that from Alabama.
In your conversations with Senator Britt, Senator Tuberville, the other members of the delegation, I know y'all talk and are close. This isn't final, right? Do you think there's still an opportunity to get it?
Yeah, for sure. We're going to fight, and all of us together. I mean, in the whole state's united. And I want to say this: it's not just Republicans; it's Democrats too. I want to thank Representative Daniels. He's been fighting hard. Representative, Congressman Sewell. I mean, he's done a great job. And so, it's Republicans and Democrats are united in Alabama, and that we are the right place. And I believe that because we are the Rocket City, and it is the rightful place, and we're going to keep fighting to make sure we don't let politics get in the way of that.
Switching gears, I want to talk about an issue that you've championed this session, kind of unexpectedly, and that is to cut or reduce the sales tax on groceries. This kind of came out of nowhere, seemingly. I mean, it's been proposed, been an idea for like 20 years, but until the session really got into its first couple of weeks, nobody was really talking about it. Suddenly, you, Senator Jones, and some others, obviously some representatives, started talking about, no, we're going to cut this grocery tax. Y'all had a bill with 35 co-sponsors in the Senate, which hardly ever happens, but there's news in the House. Tell me about the latest with the grocery tax and why you're so bullish.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, kind of give you a little bit of history. When I was in the House, Representative Friday, that's now Judge Friday, right? He was passionate about this, carried the bill. There was a study commission. I helped support that and have always been in support of eliminating. The problem was back, when we were in the House from 2014 to 18, honestly, we just couldn't afford it. Right now we can, and so it's been something I've been in support of.
It was a revenue thing.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, so it's just back. I mean, when I came in 2015, right, we had an $800 million deficit. So I mean,
people forget.
Right. I mean, so we couldn't obviously cut something if we got a deficit. We were trying to, we could cut government, right, and we did that. And we were able to knock back a lot of those taxes. But so fast forward to now, I mean, you've had a lot of people, Republicans and Democrats, that have been pushing for this. And then I wanted to do something that could help every Alabamian, right? And so obviously everybody has to have food. Everybody's going to continue to have food. And I just feel like it's a regressive tax. And I think it's time for us to get rid of it. And also I felt like just inflation's killing people. Right? I mean, honestly, it is. I mean, I hear from people that it's, their check's not going as far, just because the cost of goods have gone up. So this is something we can do to reduce it. And so the House, we had 100 co-sponsors. That's a big deal, right? Out of 105. A few of them weren't there. Almost every House member signed it. Every Senate member signed it. My understanding is next week they're going to take it up in committee, and it'll be on the floor, and they're going to send it to the Senate. And then I fully expect the Senate to take it up and pass that before session's over. And that's going to be a big deal for Alabama, but most importantly, it's going to be a tax break for every Alabamian when they go to buy groceries, and that's a win.
And we should explain, it has to start this is a tax,
that's right,
a revenue tax thing, and by the Constitution has to start in the House. That's why, even though that the Senate bill had all these co-sponsors, you had to go to the House option and start it there. We've only got 9 days left, including today, and so are you confident that there's enough time left that this can actually make it through?
Yeah, my understanding is the House leadership wanted to travel with the budget, which, I think would be in committee next Wednesday, on the floor Thursday. And certainly, I'm not going to tell them what to do and respect that. And I'm thankful that it's a priority for them. And then they'll send it to the Senate. And, I mean, we're ready, right? I think the Senate will take it up and certainly get it in committee and then get it on the floor and get it passed and then, get it to the governor to get signed.
It's interesting because this issue of tax cuts has evolved. Back in February, March, we were talking about tax rebates, one-time checks to everybody for at that time it was $400 to $800. Now that's down to $100 for these tax rebates. But polling came out. The issue has just evolved to where more. I mean, what I hear in the House and the Senate is they're more interested in a permanent tax cut on groceries rather than that one-time check. It's nice to get a check,
sure,
but people are more interested in that long-term savings, and like you're talking about with inflation, is that what you're hearing, and is that part of why you're such in support of this grocery tax?
Yeah, I mean, so my policy position is a tax cut is better than a one-time rebate because it's forever, right? And so, I mean, I think certainly most people in Alabama would agree with that. Instead of just getting a one-time check, what we're wanting to do is actually have a tax cut that's going to be there permanently and forever, and so that's going to help everybody long-term with inflation as things go up. Not against a rebate. A rebate's fine, right? I don't think anybody's going to be opposed to getting a check, but I just don't think that's the best policy, right? And so I think you'll probably see a combination of both, a rebate, and not sure what the House is going to do on that, but and then I think certainly a tax cut as well. And I think doing that plus saving money plus investing is I think a wise strategy, and certainly something where we're giving people relief. We're putting money back because we don't know what the economy is going to do in the future, and we're continuing to invest in areas of our state that need it. So that's important.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth, thanks again.
Yeah, always great to be on. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Joining me next is State Representative Anthony Daniels of Huntsville, Minority Leader for the Alabama House of Representatives. Mr. Leader, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Todd.
Here we are. I guess 7 more days to go in legislative session, so we're really getting to the final stretch. I wanted to talk about one of your premier bills. This is the overtime income tax credit, or cut, cutting taxes on any overtime work done. It's a novel idea. You've gotten a lot of support in the House, but it has to go through the Senate. And I wondered where it was in the process, considering there are budgetary, factors at work.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of positive support in the Senate. I haven't met a senator or a House member that's opposed to the bill. I see the business community getting more engaged from all corners of the state of Alabama, telling me and others how much this will move the needle for them as it relates to retention of employees. Mm-hmm. But also, it's essentially a pay raise for employees without the employer having to actually give it. And so this is certainly a great piece of legislation. They're really in support of it. I think that right now where we are, the prioritization of tax breaks. And so seeing the impact from the Education Trust Fund, which this will be, the impact will be from the income tax portion of it. Mm-hmm. But on the sales tax portion of it, you'll see growth there. So this is the only real tax break for working class people that will incentivize working class people and put more money in their pockets. But at the same time, it'll create an opportunity for local and county municipalities to receive more tax revenue based from the spending of those individuals, those hourly workers, spending those dollars back into the local economy. So it's the only one, the only break that actually yields positive returns for local and county and state government.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of on a related note, you've also got the child care tax credit. I mean, same kind of, talking about workforce, talking about the labor shortage that we've got right now, and just the issue of child care in general. I was talking with your co-sponsor on this, Senator Gudger, and just about the need for child care. And COVID kind of exposed that maybe more than a lot of us really understood. So walk me through what this child tax credit does, or child care tax credit does, and its prospects to get passed.
Well, I will tell you, Senator Gudger is an awesome champion and great senator that has been pushing things that have been really focused on the economy and seeing the returns and creating opportunity for Alabama. And so I applaud him on carrying this piece of legislation, authoring this piece of legislation in the Senate. And so what this piece of legislation will do is it'll give us an opportunity to get folks that are no longer in the workforce back into the workforce. Families right now having to make decisions based upon if I work these amount of hours, what is it going to cost me to put my child in child care? Or are there any quality options of child care in my area? And so the answer to those questions is there's very limited access to child care and really giving a company an opportunity, employer an opportunity to either build or create space for their own child care facility, just like our friends at Alpha. Alpha has a child care facility that does wonders, high quality, provide a lot of opportunity for their employees, as well as the folks that are across the street at the hospital. And so what this will do is give employers an opportunity to have a tax credit for having a child care facility on site, or to also give that company an opportunity to create an opportunity for their employees to have child care space for a local provider. And so it's an incentive for individuals to be able to come back to work. It's an incentive and a break, a relief for the pockets of working families in general. If it's a five-star facility, then that tax rate is at about $2,000. But anything below that 4 all the way down to 1, there's a taken off about $250. And so it's a benefit for all child care providers and employers in general. But more importantly, it helps the working men and women in the state of Alabama. And I think it's a win-win situation for the state of Alabama. It solves some of the problems that we've been talking about before, cradle to pre-K. It puts them in a quality child care facility. It solves some of our education problems and providing a pipeline there. But it also gives employers an opportunity to go back into the workforce. Employees an opportunity to go back into the workforce.
And so does the employee also get an income tax credit?
So some companies could use it. Either they could actually provide, pay directly to the facility or to the provider, or they can reimburse if you went and went back into the workforce and you fit the category. What will happen is they could actually put it, either reimburse you for what you pay, or they can pay directly to the provider.
Wow. Well, that's going to be one to watch as the session wraps up. I'm just reminded of when I worked in Washington, the waiting list for childcare, for daycare, was like years long, and people would sign up like when they got pregnant. It's just It's such an important issue, especially for folks that are trying to work.
And these companies will, even on the construction side, if I built a facility on my own site, there are some credits for the construction piece of it too, but it's capped, but it does provide some credits and opportunities for those individuals that are going to build on site.
Switching gears, I wanted to kind of talk in the weeds a little bit about process, because in the House, y'all have very different rules in the Senate. Senate, when everything's kind of normal, they just click along. Y'all have employed, you've used the rules to your advantage. Your caucus, Democratic caucus, has used the rules to your advantage to slow things down, right? Whether it's debating a bill or a motion, a BIR, or whatever, slowing it down to require whoever's sponsoring the bill to really explain a lot. Walk me through the process there. How does that, do y'all meet beforehand and kind of strategize about who's going to be speaking on what bill and sort of the tactics behind all that?
So what we try to do is we try to use our experts, subject matter experts, to really be able to take the lead on certain issues. Many of us are not attorneys within the caucus, but bills that deal with criminal law or law in general and things that are not necessarily clear to the average person, those individuals go down and kind of lead the debate. But before all of that, what we try to do is be respectful of every sponsor, regardless of whether it's Democrat or Republican. And so what we do is we do a bill analysis. Our staff and our law fellows, they do a bill analysis to see the pros and cons of each piece of legislation that's introduced, whether it goes to committee or whether it's headed to the floor, to make certain that we totally understand and we're laying it, lowering the hay for the cows to eat, so that the average person can understand exactly what the bill does and where are some of the challenges. And so what we try to focus on is are there ways to improve this particular bill to where we can support the bill? Or is there a way for us to be able to water it down enough to where it has little to no impact? And so we use those type of strategies before going to the floor. But you have members within the caucus, especially those individuals that are in leadership roles, that have a responsibility to go in and actually try to negotiate first. We try to negotiate first.
Okay.
And if the bill sponsor, sometimes the bill sponsor really don't want to compromise on it, and that's very rare. But when that happens, so we utilize the rules to our advantage. We'll take time on the front end to kind of have a discussion about it on the calendar, about some of the issues, which will give myself an opportunity to go back and negotiate with the bill sponsor or my staff to be able to say, hey, let's kind of make the process a lot easier. Let's figure out a way to reach some common ground. And so it's a negotiating process. When you see the process being slowed down, that means that we're negotiating, or that means that we're so far apart to where we're unable to come to any agreement.
Yeah, negotiating like, look, this could either be a long day or a short day if you want to take our amendment. Yeah, and they certainly do that in the Senate as well. While I have you, I wanted to ask about Space Command. You represent Huntsville, so you no doubt saw this news out of Washington where, of course, it's all kind of unnamed sources and everything, but there's speculation that the Biden administration is going to tell the Pentagon to reverse its decision to not locate Space Command permanently at the headquarters there in Huntsville. Obviously, that would be a devastating loss for Huntsville, especially considering everybody believes it's coming. It's been talked about it that it was around the abortion issue, not only Alabama's strict abortion law, but also Senator Tuberville's tactics that he's using to pick at the Pentagon's abortion policy. So from your perspective, up representing that area, how is the community reacting?
We have community members that are very concerned about the public conversations from our U.S. Senator around this particular issue, which has made it very difficult and uncomfortable for a lot of folks that are in the Huntsville area, as well as those that are out supporting the Huntsville. And so for me, I just asked the president to really look at the merit of the infrastructure. You know, how Alabama and especially North Alabama, we are very uniquely positioned. We have the infrastructure, whether it's our higher education institutions, even our K-12 system. We have the cybersecurity school, cybersecurity engineering school, that's providing a pipeline for the workforce long term. We have our four-year institution, our two-year institutions that are also supporting those efforts. We have the research park. We have the infrastructure that's supporting DOD as well as NASA currently. And so we're the perfect place to have this. Now, I do understand that there have been some conversation about some of the laws that have been passed in the state of Alabama. But at the end of the day, you have folks like myself and others, leaders that within the state of Alabama, that are working hard to ensure that Alabama is moving in the right direction and creating opportunity for its citizens. And so I just hope that we could get past the political theater that's happening right now with our U.S. Senator and the White House. But I think that at the end of the day, being in politics, there are ways to deal with those type of issues without hurting the people of the state of Alabama.
Mm-hmm. This is a huge hypothetical because I think it's politically difficult for Republicans these days to scale back anything when it comes to abortion. But we have arguably the strictest law, right? There's basically no exceptions. But could you see a scenario if Space Command really gets pulled and it really is about abortion? Do you see a scenario where this legislature would entertain scaling back that law to where it used to be, heartbeat law, 20-week, 15-week, whatever it is, more like the states that are surrounded us, or is that just a non-starter?
So I would say that it would be very difficult to do it ahead of the 2024 elections. And I think that, in politics, in the camps, regardless of what your thoughts about what's right and what's wrong, a lot of things are political. And so, therefore, I think we've always been open to, especially with the rape and incest exception, also providing law that protect the doctors that are doing, dealing with miscarriages, or in case of the emergency, in case of the mother's life or death. And so we've always pushed legislation or introduced legislation to try to protect those particular individuals that I just named. And so even dealing with those pieces of legislation to protect from a rape and incest protection and providing more healthcare opportunities, trying to attract more OBGYNs. And so there's a domino effect. And so to answer your question, I do see impact. I do see other individuals that are looking at the state of Alabama making a similar decision. But I just hope that this particular decision is not just based upon that, which is not. I think you see the political theater that's happening back and forth, and it's getting worse. And so I would say that, at the end of the day, we need more adults in the room. We need more adults in the room making certain that they understand the impact that this will have on people and put politics to the side.
Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting issue post-Dobbs because I remember back in 2019 when this law was passed, even the sponsors were saying, No, this is not the policy we want. This is just a vehicle to the Supreme Court. We want something a little more like what we used to have, heartbeat, 15-week, whatever. Well, now it's law, and it's almost unintentional, or at least that's what they said. But there's no going back, right? Because it's just politically not really feasible for Republicans to, run for re-election after they've, scaled back an abortion law. So I found it fascinating as an issue, and yeah, it has consequences. But we're out of time, Mr. Daniels. But thanks again for coming on Capitol Journal.
Thank you for having me, Todd. Always good to see you.
We'll be right back. Joining me next is Amanda Senn, Director of the Alabama Securities Commission. Amanda, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
And I should say congratulations.
Thank you.
You are the new director
I am.
Of the commission. Joe Borg retired recently after
almost 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's been on the show many times, but heard about your appointment as director, and congratulations. But I wanted to have the opportunity for the audience to get to know you and your role. So could you kind of talk about your background and what led you to this role?
Thanks, Todd. Sure. Yeah. So Joe Borg recently retired. I know Alabama was all up in arms. What's going to happen with the Securities Commission? Joe's been an incredible mentor and friend to me. I started nearly 15 years ago at the Securities Commission as an intern and then a baby lawyer, and in 2014 became the general counsel. Expressed a great interest in some of the broker-dealer cases that followed the 2008 financial crisis, and was hired in as a prosecutor. So I've been involved in litigation and accepted some of the legislative responsibilities as well. And Joe has been so involved in the securities regulatory world for so long. He said somebody needs to understand the securities regulatory environment, and we're going to dump all this information on you. And so he has been able to expose me to a lot of the areas of the securities world in the last 15 years. And so my background is as a prosecutor, but I spent a lot of time on the administrative and legislative side since 2014.
Yeah. Well, could you kind of remind us what all the Security Commission does?
Yes. We often hear, comments from the public that we regulate security guards, and that is not the case. So if there is a stock, bond, debenture, any type of investment involved, that's where we come in. We have almost 70 employees down here in downtown in Montgomery in the Dexter building, and we're divided into 4 divisions. So we have an investigative division that investigates complaints that come in from our Alabama citizens, and then other law enforcement agencies make referrals. Sometimes we'll have our legislators that hear constituent complaints, they'll also contact us. And other law enforcement partners in the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, attorney general, they're all sending us information about Alabama's investment type community. So we have a unit that handles that. We see elder exploitation as well, I'll mention that later. But we also have, once the investigative team reviews the files, a legal division in-house. So we're able to prosecute our own cases. We see civil cases, criminal cases, and we have administrative authority to shut down conduct that would be that the public needs to know about immediately. We can take swift action so that our investors aren't continuing to give over money to a fraudster. On the other side of the house, we also register or license the financial professionals that are handling our Alabamians, dollars and retirement accounts.
Like a broker or something.
We have broker dealers and investment advisors. Those are the 2 type of financial planners or members of the financial community. And so we take a look at their financial reports that they send in just to make sure that they are complying with state and there are certain federal laws of like minimal capital requirements. We want to make sure that the people that are handling our retirement accounts, don't have a history of embezzlement or, committed other felonies. So we take a look at that, and then we go in and audit these firms generally every 3 years. And at the same time, we're a resource to our financial community. Alabama has a very strong financial industry. We have good folks here. And then oftentimes we are in a position to hear about new frauds or trends or schemes, or when cybersecurity sort of became a thing, we received information about good cybersecurity practices. So while we're in the firms auditing, we're a resource to our financial community on the industry side. On top of that, we have an investor education division, and so we're constantly on the road holding financial educational seminars, promoting financial literacy. We educate our Alabamians on the types of frauds that we're seeing. And last year we did over 100 events. So any community that would like us to come in, we come in and meet with them and just talk to folks about the things that we see down here in Montgomery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before we started recording, you were talking about some of the scams that y'all see, because that's a lot of what we're talking about, right? Is somebody is perpetrating a fraud and taking advantage of somebody. That's where y'all come in. Are there any examples you could kind of give of some interesting cases?
Yeah, the list is so long. A lot of our sort of into two categories. We have the fraudsters in the physical world, and those are the Bernie Madoff type schemes and scams, Ponzi schemes. We also see just guys that don't have a financial background at all that have concocted an investment type program, either through a product or some type of fund that they think is going to hit big. For example, a few years ago in Lee County, there was a guy, Kyle Sandler, and people still talk about this case, that wanted to help promote entrepreneurs and get them up and running. And so it was a great idea, and people were excited about that because we love to promote small businesses. But what he didn't tell the folks that he was accepting money from is that he was taking their dollars and stealing it, using it for personal use. And so that's a little more sophisticated scheme. But we see just the schemes that involved Joe Blow on the street that came up with this harebrained idea to steal $10,000 from poor Miss Jones, one of our seniors here in Alabama, and by promising her, because she's getting close to, she's in her golden years and she's going to run out of money if she doesn't do something with this $10,000 cash that's sitting out. So he fabricates a story about an investment where he'll be able to provide her, some return on her money, and just steals the money. So we see a lot of those theft type things with an investment story. In the physical world, we have seen since COVID a 100% uptick in the scams that are being perpetrated on our seniors here in Alabama through the internet.
Yeah.
A lot of romance scams. I get the reports on my desk, millions of dollars being lost to fraud online and through cell phones and other type electronic devices, and that's heartbreaking.
So you say romance scams. I mean, this is like online love kind of thing, and you need to send me $10,000 or I've got something like that. That just sounds so sad.
I know it is sad, but you just during COVID, people were at home, they were lonely, and you don't know the situation that you may find yourself in. We've had people that have been involved in law enforcement task force that have become victims of a romance scam, and I talked with them after, and I said, well, what happened? These are thefts. We talk about these all the time, and it's just loneliness, and you develop friendships online, especially in the South. We trust folks, and these are crimes of trust, and we want to be hospitable. Mm-hmm. So fraudsters here are still stealing millions of dollars from folks through online romance scams. I tell them, they're not going to come down and take you out, don't give them any money, certainly not.
Well, and not just romance, but other things. What can people do to protect themselves? Are there warning signs or the red flags that people need to know about?
Sure. In the physical world, if there's a guy approaching you or a female, we have female defendants as well, about an investment opportunity, that's where we come in. And our public, we have a website. Call us. That's what we do. We provide you information about our licensed financial community. Mm-hmm. If you have questions about an investment, you can vet them through us. They have to be licensed, so we know who's responsible for their money, the firm behind them. So always check, you can do your due diligence that way. Online, it's a little trickier because we're making purchases online, and fraudsters are often overseas coming in, but I just tell people, don't give anybody money online through a social media site. If you're paying your bills online, be very careful that you're sending the money to the right website, because there are frauds now that are almost identical. They're creating websites that are almost identical to some of these utility companies. And so the safest way is just to sit in your home, unplug, don't go outdoors. Well, we're not going to live that way.
I actually had one the other day that was a scam that it looked like the Postal Service.
Yeah.
And so it wanted me to give a credit card information. Like, why would the Postal Service want? But
Good question.
It looked exactly, it looked legit. And so I'm glad I didn't, but I thought in my head, like, almost anybody could have mistaken that, because we trust the Postal
Oh,
Service.
sure,
You know?
and they do. And there were so many that have responded. Like I said, I have complaints on my desk where they received a legitimate FedEx envelope with the real check, and the instructions in there told the person to do X, Y, Z.
Seems
and,
legit.
Right? Yeah. It's hard to tell the fraud from what's truthful now.
Well, we're almost out of time, but since we're in the middle of legislative session, you talked about your role also on the legislative side. Is there anything that the legislature is working on that y'all are working together on this session?
Not exactly, but there are bills that we have partnered with industry, partnered with the industry in the past to help promote. So our office has, because most of our folks have been here so long, developed a lot of institutional knowledge. If members of our financial community do have bills that are in the legislature, or our legislators routinely contact us for advice, guidance, et cetera, on investment type bills and financial programs. So we are always monitoring the legislation that's out there to be sure that anything that is brought in from out of this state that may be detrimental to our investment community or to our Alabamians, we're monitoring that. And certainly on the criminal side, we want to make sure that the criminal enhancements are there for fraudsters, and especially the people that rip off our Alabama seniors.
Yeah, for sure. Very important work often goes unnoticed, but sometimes that's the most important work.
That's right. Yeah, and we are a resource to Alabamians, so they will know Alabama Securities Commission. We're down here in Montgomery. They can contact us anytime.
And we'll put the website up.
Thank you.
But Amanda, congratulations again.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back Monday at 10:30 with more coverage of the Alabama legislature right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.